Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in. You're listening in to Dr. Berst from Auckland, New Zealand, and today we are having a little bit of a chat with artist number 2 for the Avondale Pavilion project. That is Levi from MCF. Thanks for joining us, man.
What's up, Bobby?
What up? Alright, so today's a bit of an informal conversation. For the listeners that don't know who you are, could you tell me a little bit about your first interactions with art?
Yeah, so I grew up in Herne Bay, which was like the south side of Herne Bay. South side? Which was more like Greyland or Ponsonby back in the late 70s, early 80s. And so we were a lot of my parents' friends were artists, and there was an artist who lived across the road from me called Derek Cowie, and I don't know if that's how you say his last name, but he used to draw me, and he'd draw pictures of my toys, and I remember he made me this pole that he painted, and it had like diagonal lines on it and a line through the middle, and when you spin it the lines would move up and down like it would spiral. It was quite sort of geometric. He's still around, he's an amazing artist, but yeah, so I think like being exposed to that, and then my dad was in the 80s he was a lawyer, and he did a lot of work for people who were artists, and they'd do contra, so he ended up with some pretty cool art on his walls, and encouraged me a lot. I think I gave him like a birthday card when he was a kid, and it was square, and it was a diagonal line. It was like one side was blue and one side was red, and then it had a stick going up, and then it had a flag that had the same thing on it. So I think I sort of picked up on geometric art pretty young, and that was something that, yeah, like just that the art that was on the walls had a big influence on me.
And so during your years, studying at high school, did you study any art?
Yeah, I always took art. I did painting, and then when I got into 5th form, 6th form and 7th form, I did photography for both years. I actually got my best marks in photography, and I did painting. I actually took sculpture in 7th form and didn't end up doing anything. I didn't submit anything for sculpture. It's taken me a wee while to learn what I wanted to make. But yeah, I was super into art, and in 7th form I got 48%, I think, for my painting, and I don't know, 60 something for photography, and I was a little bit bummed out because I was painting pictures of people chilling at Aotea Square and skating, and it meant a lot to me. It was like I was actually painting a scene of where we were hanging out and what was going on, and it was kind of heartbreaking my technique probably wasn't the best, but to get such a low score and be judged, I think it put me off school and pushed me further into graffiti, which was in 7th form one of the main things that was influencing me and stoking me out.
Did that have a kind of detrimental effect, like on the kind of trajectory of where you wanted to go?
Yeah, definitely. But I don't really feel like they taught us many techniques to make me a good. I mean, I guess we'd done a few years of art, but there was, I don't know, we just didn't experiment enough, I don't think, and I don't know, just being more focused on the subject. Because I mean, you can have all the technique in the world, but if you don't have something that you are passionate about and something that you want to make art about, then it's useless, But I think I don't know if it was detrimental, but it was detrimental to me wanting to go to another institution and be judged.
And so at that point as well, at high school, did you know you wanted to become an artist?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, I was really into clothing as well. Like I was making my own jeans and clothes, because skate clothes were hard to get and they were expensive, and so I don't know, I kind of had the dream of starting my own skate brand or skate clothing brand. I definitely wanted to do art and wanted to create things and design things. I was really into logos and just kind of like everything in that whole area. But I think like skateboarding was just such a big part of my life that the skateboard culture and the fashion and everything that went with it was just, I thought was just the shit, and that was what I wanted to do.
And what got you into skateboarding?
When you're a little kid, just people were skateboarding, you know. It's like people were breakdancing and there was graffiti, and you know, it was just what was trendy, I guess. I know I did sport and stuff. I played soccer and I went to Cub Scouts for a little bit, and it just didn't really, it was all good, but I don't know, once I started skating, it was just, I was BMXing too, but I don't know, skateboarding just started taking over because there was so much more to it. There was so much more physics and I don't know, and it just had such a vibe about it.
And what was the scene like, the skateboarding scene like, when you kind of first got into it?
Well, I mean, when you're a little kid, you don't really you weren't really part of the scene. I didn't really know that the scene existed. It was sort of like you were just a little kid, and it was kind of hidden, you know. You go to the skateboard like Toll Street Bowl and Ponsonby, and you'd see some people there, but you didn't really. It was all pretty surfy, and you know, it wasn't till like the late '80s that, you know, like there started to be an actual scene.
And so at that time when you first started skating, were there any things like events or skateboarding competitions and things like that kind of got you quite involved in that?
Yeah, there was like skateboard demos and well, more competitions really. Competitions, and then I don't know, there was an odd demo, and just when skateboarding got real big, then like you'd have dudes coming over from America and stuff.
You've mentioned to me in the past that you also were sponsored at some point.
Just when I was 13, there was a skate shop called the Blue Tile Lounge, and I know, like, I guess we saw there were skateboard teams like the Edwards team and the Cheapskates team, you know, they were the same sort of thing. And then like you'd see like the pro skaters were in teams, and I know the Blue Tile Lounge was like kind of this new ragtag skate shop that came out. It had like all the inside of the walls were all like spray painted with like this dude from Canada, Aaron Segner, painted like all the skate logos all over the walls and kind of graffiti and stuff. And when they opened up, I was like, everyone who was like wearing their t-shirts was so cool, so I just like hassled them so they gave me a t-shirt, and then hassled them and hung out and helped people, customers, like until they gave me a job. And so I worked there on Saturdays for like $4 an hour until that was like when I was 13, 14, and then I worked for them for a while, and they wouldn't put me on the team because it wasn't good enough. And then when I was 15, but I still just like, I don't know, I got like a tiny discount and I got money, so everyone kind of thought that I skated for them because I repped so hard. And then when I was 15, I got 4th in the national skate champs in the open street because I messed up in the under 16s, and I went in the open and skated way better because I just relaxed because I was like, didn't care. I got 4th, and then when I came back, they were like, we'll put you on the team now. Yeah, so I had a shop sponsor, and then I got like sponsored by the distributor that bought in Pal Peralta, and so they hooked me up with like Mike McGill's company, Chapter 7, and then that kind of folded, and then I was writing Pal stuff. And then Boom Skateboard started up in 1992, and I started writing for them.
Sure. And what did your parents think about all of this? You kind of delving into this world of skateboarding?
Well, I mean, they weren't super stoked.
Why not?
Well, just because there was no parents were, especially back then, were quite sensible because they were told by their parents what they could and couldn't do, and it was all about being able to get a decent job and being able to buy a house and being able to support yourself and support a family and all that sort of stuff. And skateboarding was just really perceived as a good way to hurt yourself and get in trouble and have a misspent youth, you know. and come out of it with nothing. And they're right, you know, like, because even to this day, like, skateboarding does not pay me, you know, and I've been a New Zealand pro, so I've had my own board with my name on it, like a few of them, but, you know, even then I wasn't as good as like a lot of the other guys that were New Zealand pros or took it to America. There just seemed like there was no reason to do it, other than that I was going to end up hanging out with bad people, and I didn't really know about drugs and stuff, but they probably did, and so they just probably thought, oh, he's going to end up, you know, a bad kid doing drugs, and, you know, and go down that slope. But they didn't really see like all the positive sides of it so much. But at the same time, they still reluctantly supported me, you know, and like they were still there. There was a level of support, and, you know, but it was kind of good in a way to be independent. And, you know, I see kids these days whose their mum and dads like coach them, and I seen like a kid, you know, at the bowl, and he's like trying a trick, and then he's like in between trying a trick, and his dad comes up and bends down, and he's like doing up his shoelace, and like I could see that the kid was embarrassed, and I was like, you know, like maybe it's better that my parents like just didn't get involved, and they just left me to,
yeah,
you know, like, because I thought that's kind of like lame, and I don't know, some of those kids are just not going to have any defense against the real world, because if they get mothered too much, you know.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool when things are a little bit harsh.
So during this kind of skating journey, did you have a kind of like a mentor, I guess, within this kind of skate world?
Yeah, I had Varna Edhouse, who worked at Blue Tile Lounge and skated for Blue Tile Lounge, and he was like a hardcore street skater, but he was super nice. Like, a lot of the dudes were assholes, or they just were smart asses, and you just, because you're a young kid, you'd annoy them. But Varna was super cool, and when a lot of the guys wouldn't let you go to the ramps or go to skate the cool spots or whatever, he like would drive me around, and I was like his little protege, you know. And then like there's these dudes that are the Mapstone brothers, who came over from Australia, and they were super good, and they also like Andrew helped start Boom, and so I started hanging out with like Maury, Chris Schofield, like all the Cheapskates guys after Blue Tile Lounge kind of faded, and I just moved up to Cheapskates, and because Frank Edwards kind of wanted me on board.
Is that why you always had a piece on Simon Street? No, Kaiba Pass, beside the Cheapskates?
Yeah, pretty much. Like I remember being in the shop when Butch and that came in, when they painted that wall the first time, and sort of seeing them, and Butch did some of the original designs for Boom. There was one of the original Boom jeans had like a embroidery on the back pocket, like a Boom sort of in graffiti writing that Butch did.
Maybe that's a good segue actually to the graph part. So what was your first experiences with graffiti?
I mean, seeing my mum she had a stall at the Cook Street markets, and she sold shirts that she made, so I spent a lot of time hanging out around there, and I remember like seeing graffiti on the side of there, you know, like the Foot Rot Flats dog and stuff. And
do you have any recollections of who did that?
I think it was like Smooth Crew. I know you just see it around the streets, like mostly like Smooth Crew stuff, I guess. Like there was like the Electric Boogaloo one that I think was on the side of the High Court. And I remember coming to primary school one morning and seeing the side of the library, there was like a massive piece that said Auckland, with like the city, like the buildings in the background, but they were like real, just like rectangles with like lights in them, you know. And it was like, you know, black silhouette with a dark blue with stars, you know. I just remember that. It just tripped me out coming to school and just seeing that. And I don't know, and then I guess just through skateboarding, because in the 90s graffiti just infiltrated skateboarding so hard, you know. Even like Pal Peralta, who I like, when that first came out, and the Bones Brigade videos, you know, there was like, they were spray painting like the Rat Bones logo, and you know, they were like, it was pretty connected to graffiti, and that only increased with street skating and brands like the New Deal, which like they had artists like Twist, Jose Gomez, Andy Howe, who were like real, and it was mostly like the graffiti character type things that really kicked off, but it was also like the lettering and whatnot, and hip hop, and yeah, it just kind of grew from there.
So what was your first call to adventure to actually go paint graffiti?
I think I did my first spray paint tag in Melbourne. I found like a can of chrome or something, I think, and I tagged, because I was tagging a lot, like in my books and drawing outlines and stuff, but I just never really connected to doing it. So yeah, in '94 I was in Melbourne, and I don't know, we found a spray can or something, and I did a tag, probably held the can like about a foot away from the wall. Yeah, and then when I came back from Australia after travelling around in the end of '94, I don't know, I came back and there was a few dudes that I sort of ran into through Aotea Square and that, like Eunuch. I went out and this dude Tails, who was American, I ran into him at the square and he came back and we hung out and he showed me all his tag, like he had sort of LA tag styles, and so I kind of learned some styles off him, and then I was kind of started getting more into the tagging side of it. I was more into the characters and the big letters, like, but and then I got into the tagging, and then I ran into like Eunuch, and I was starting to see stuff around, and I went out with Eunuch and I did my first tag in Auckland on like Pitt Street. I've actually got a tile right on that wall now, but yeah, I just remember like we had VHTs or something, and I held like the can about a foot away from the wall again. And then Eunuch schooled me, and he was like, you gotta hold it up close to, like, he'd be like scratching it against the wall, like the actual can, you know? Then that was sort of like the buzz for a little bit, like you'd tag real, try and get as close to the wall as you could, and there'd be like marks through the paint from where the can like was scratching against the wall. And then I met like some of the other guys, a crew that he was hanging out with, like Disguise and Cripes, and I forget about like DLT and Opto, who were painting. I remember seeing them painting Paris, Texas on High Street, probably around that same time. And
what was Paris, Texas? That was like a retail store, right?
Yeah, like all the streetwear stores and High Street and that were all called, like, they were named after places overseas.
Yeah, I remember.
You had like Paris, Texas, and then you had Harlem 23.
That's right.
And but it was kind of funny that we were adapting all these like kind of street places from overseas.
From America, yeah. What kind of led you down the path of painting pieces and things like that?
I mean, I was so interested in it already. I just didn't know anyone. Like, I didn't know anyone that did it. Or, I mean, and like I said, there was like DLT in that, but I didn't really feel like I could go and talk to them, but it was like seeing people your own age doing it and stuff. I know, and then just like learning about the paint, learning about spray cans, and then I think I saw like these real nice tags, and I was like, whoa, what are those cans, you know? And it was like, oh, they're Tucson. And so we started getting buying the Tucsons and like stealing the Tucsons, and we worked out where the factory, with the distributor, and yeah, and so we go and get them. And I think like just once you sort of realize that, okay, you can control this paint, you know. So we started I started doing pieces.
Who was your main kind of partner in crime at the time when you were doing all the pieces?
Well, I mean, it was the first pieces I did were with Dion, because I knew him through skateboarding, and we were like both super into hip hop, and I kind of heard that he'd started piecing. He'd done a piece with Brett Chan, and I don't know, so I was like, dude, like, and he knew the Daft guys. We started going down to Combat Zone and seeing what they were doing, and my first piece was like a 3-can, hardly a piece in Newmarket, and then my second piece was in Combat Zone, and that was with Dion, and that was in the background of the Damn Native Horrified 1 video.
So you got a piece in that too?
Yeah, it was Yeah, it's buzzy. It's pretty out of it piece. But yeah, and then my third piece was at Mountain train station. Yeah, just like gradually started to get better, but it was hard because like Dion was like, he was going out with Aaron B's younger sister. So like he got kind of accepted into the DAF crew, like, and everyone hated on him so hard for it as well, like just because he got to learn all about the knowledge and we were just kind of like out on the outside. And then there was like this guys like DJ Potts. He was hanging out with Otis and DLT and that, so he was learning off them. And then there was like me, Cripes, Ken's. Like I met up with Ken's and we just clicked straight away because we had similar tastes in hip hop, and we had underground tapes that no one else had that we were like getting from different people, and so we kind of like swapped tapes. I had an underground AC Alone tape, Freestyle Fellowship, and he had like a casual Sophia battle from Hieroglyphics, and we kind of bonded over that. But yeah, we were just kind of like, I don't know, we were always sort of like, I guess like the outsiders, because I think we were kind of a little bit became hostile to the guys that were the insiders, and decided that it was uncool to be connected to the guys that were already established. We were really sort of like, you've got to have your own style and learn your own way to do it, which was kind of dumb really, because eventually, you know, we were just making stupid mistakes all the time and not learning the proper ways.
What was the graffiti culture like? Because you've also mentioned a little bit about, you know, having underground tapes, and, you know, just kind of sounds like there's a bit of a connection with hip hop.
Yeah, it was a total connection with hip hop. I mean, because there was a lot going on, you know, and there was, you know, like with like Urban Disturbance and well, because I'd already been like freestyling for a couple of years. Like when I was 16, I was going out to the clubs and freestyling, you know, like going to Core Celeb and freestyling with like Day Hummer and King Capisi, and I remember rhyming at gigs where there was like Danny D was there, you know, and everyone was sort of battling it out against each other. And yeah, I was super into that already, and I got nicknamed Elroy by my skater friends, and so it was like I was already kind of MC Elroy and so it just seemed natural for that to be my tag. And then like there was a whole generation of the kids like a couple of years younger than us, like Askew and Webbs, like Vents, and all that sort of Ponsonby crew, who were like the younger brothers of, you know, like Urban Disturbance and all that. So there was a strong, and the thing is that there was like the whole gangster thing happening as well. Like we had the TCGs growing up, and I think that I was kind of put off tagging in a way and graffiti because we got such a gnarly time from the gangsters when we were teenagers, like getting stalked and chased. And
what's the TCGs? I don't know what that is.
Tongan Crip gangsters. So like the TCGs, and then there was like, I don't know, Sons of Samoa, like SOS, and then there was ES, Ebony Society, and like, so there were all the like the tagging gangs, and like I had some of my friends like Risk and Cons and that who were skaters, and then they kind of like, they stopped skating and they started getting into tagging and being gangsters and just getting drunk all the time and stuff, and I was kind of like I was a bit of a good kid, you know.
So you're saying that there was a harder edge to the people that were doing the tagging, as opposed to people doing doing pieces for the artistic side. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah, there was definitely, and it was sort of like, and at first like you had a perceived idea of like, because it's like what society thinks, that when they see tagging they think, oh, that's some Islanders or some Māori people, you know, Māori kids, and you know, but then it was funny, like then when you start meeting some of the taggers, you realize them like half or a majority of them were little white kids, you know, and some of them are bogans, and some of them are like, they're just all like misfits, you know, and some of them are like good kids, and they're clean cut, and heaps of kids from Remuera, and you know, so it was pretty interesting. But the thing is, like, I don't know, I went to Selwyn College, which was pretty multicultural, and it was right next to Glen Innes, and so we used to get like the gangsters and stuff. They'd just, dudes who didn't go to our school would just get on our school bus, and like just stalker people, just like stand over people all the way to school, and then come back and get the bus at the end of the day and stalker people on the way on the way back to the city. And then you had to get through, like, once you got off the bus at the bus station, you had to get through the bottom of town to get your next bus. You learned to run, or to ignore and run. It was easier to avoid it, you know.
And so this was during the mid-90s?
Early to mid-90s.
Yep.
Like, it was, I feel like as it did start to maybe chill out a bit more as the late 90s came on. And I think like just the integration of the taggers and the hip hoppers, and you know, because it was like suddenly there was all this cool like actual underground hip hop. A lot of the gangsters would listen to like Boys to Men and stuff like that, you know. And then there was like NWA, or you know, but then it was like all this New York hip hop started coming in, and it was like, and then I started connecting with some of the gangsters at our school, because I'd be in art class and I'd be playing like New York hip hop, and they'd be like coming up to me like, who's this, you know, like,
dope.
and so it ended up like we ended up connecting over hip hop, you know, and then I think the same thing happened with graffiti as well, because with the taggers and stuff, like, and then the taggers started interacting with the dudes that were learning to do graffiti, and then the taggers started learning to piece. The pieces were learning to tag, and it all sort of started integrating. That was when I think I probably started going astray, you know, because there were like all the guys who were kind of accepted into whatever, learning off the older guys, but then we were kind of like the outcasts, it felt like, and I don't know, and we kind of liked it, and so we sort of started going our own way, but then that sort of led us to end up hanging out with a lot more of the gangsters and stuff, and the taggers, and the people were more like who didn't really give a shit about anything, and were more likely to just want to party and break shit. And I'd sort of been a good kid, and I'd been so into skating all the time. My life was skating, and then I kind of rebelled against it and wanted to be bad.
I mean, you mentioned before also that you kind of perceived yourself as a bit of an outsider.
Yeah.
Right? How has that kind of worked to your advantage?
Well, I just think that it just pushed us to whatever everyone was doing. It pushed us to try and do something different, and to not, I don't know, like, if I guess like the main thing for me was like, because I ended up riding with Ken's a lot, and Ken's was really sort of like militantly like, you can't bite, you know, and so we saw other people being heavily influenced by the guys who were the older guys, you know, and the Daft guys, and that, and FYM, which was Otis, and that, and so we just kind of went the other way. But then I know, and then we were getting magazines and stuff, and we could see places where those guys were getting their ideas from as well, and so it was like, and that just kind of fueled us more into like, but it was so hard because you were so like, you're policing yourself as hard as you're policing everyone else. But yeah, I just think that it just kept pushing us. But I think we were just, the trouble is when you're young is that you're too hostile, and you're too like, we're right, you're wrong. You don't have a good understanding of the world, and I think because everything was so limited, what you had access to and stuff, it was like really, you know, like you claim possession, try and own every little thing that you could. But yeah, I don't know, I still kind of feel like an outsider. Now I feel like an outsider from like the art world, you know? I know like people like Askew and any graffiti writer, they feel like kind of outsiders.
Shifting a little bit more to the art that you're doing now.
Yeah.
I mean, all of the stuff that you're doing, be it the sculptures or your paintings that you're doing, to me, I think they're incredibly innovative. And I know that you are probably the first graffiti writer to be creating concrete graffiti sculptures. Do you know anybody else in New Zealand doing this?
I don't know anyone in New Zealand doing it. There's like Boris Telegon, you know, Delta.
Yep.
Like he's done sculptures that are, I don't know so much that they're artists who've moved into sculpture, but I don't know if they make them themselves, you know, like they sort of like will design something and then get someone to make it. Yeah. So yeah, I think the thing that's enjoyable to me is actually the fact that I make things out of concrete and that influences my designs, which is kind of makes it more interesting for me. It's kind of fun starting out with a really simple concrete mold and then learning from it and developing it, and then I don't know, I like trying to use the techniques that I learn to influence the designs and styles that I go with.
And so could you tell me a little bit about how you transitioned from the wall, like painting graffiti, to making these concrete sculptures? How did that kind of happen?
Well, I went from using all spray paint, and then I think like in the 2000s I was writing a lot with Wax and Ricky Octopus, and Wax was boosting heaps of paint still, but my face is too recognizable, and I was kind of well known for skateboarding, and it had just reached a point where New Zealand was too small and I wasn't prepared to have to deal with having that hanging over my shoulder all the time. And then I started using roller paint, and we all started dabbling in it, and so we were doing pieces that were like part roller paint, part spray paint, and then the more I got into the roller paint, I was doing a lot of pieces that were just block, like one color with an outline and then like a key line or something, or like maybe, you know, like a few colors. And I was doing scrub fill pieces, which I'd seen in Melbourne when I was over there. Like I'd seen a mural piece, and it had like kind of throw up letters all around it, and they were like done in scrub fill with like skinny cap, so they're like real, but it was really tight, and I think that was by Murder, and that kind of got me hyped. So I started doing scrub fill outlines, and then I don't know, like everything started getting buffed around 2007, 2008, and I got some grey roller paint, and I just started doing some canvases in grey paint with black outlines. And yeah, I'd been doing heaps of pieces with like just heaps of roller paint, paintbrushes, just going for a different look as well, because I was kind of bored of everyone was trying to look like New York wild style, top to bottom fade, you know, pointy letters, and I started wanting to get more sort of square and curves and do something different. I think after working in a sign shop for a summer, I'd been influenced by that, and then I just went to grey, and I like the idea of like, because everything got painted grey, and I was like, okay, well, if you love grey, I'll do graffiti in grey, because that's what you want. And it also, I don't know, I was getting into real simplifying stuff and just doing really big pieces as high as I could reach, you know, just big, just blocking out the wall. Yeah, and so I did the piece in Dunedin, which was like 45 meters or something, 50 meters of river tunnel in grey paint, and I don't know, and then I was doing canvases and stuff, and I just really I started getting more into the concepts about like grey paint and gentrification and And we were I was working with the council trying to get things happening with skate parks, and we'd talk about graffiti because they were sandblasting the skate parks and making them rough. And I was like, well, what's the point in building these new skate parks and then sandblasting graffiti off? Why don't you just leave it? And they're like, oh no, because, you know, it'll spread from the skate park to the surrounding areas, and it'll bring down the property prices, which in translation means it'll stop the property prices from going up, which is exactly what has been the goal, and that's why house prices are so ridiculous. Not just because of graffiti, but you know, like that's one thing that was in action. So that was really interesting to me. And just like in the amount of time that you would spend doing graffiti and then having it removed, or someone going over you because they didn't think your style was a classic graffiti style. So I kind of took my work away, and I was just doing paintings and not really doing walls anymore. I don't know, I guess like the news stories about my art and stuff were saying that I'd started painting canvases. I'd come inside from the cold, and you know, I'd come in from the outside and all this sort of stuff. Well, that's how, like, yeah, it was. And it was like they were trying to market the idea of don't go tagging, be like Levi and bring your work inside from the cold and put it on a painting and sell it, because once you capitalize on it, then it's part of capitalism, and it's accepted. Otherwise you're going against it. Yeah, so I didn't come inside for that reason. I came inside because I just was sick of the stalemate and sick of putting so much energy and time and resources into something that was just a losing battle, that was going to end up with me locked up and poor and losing all my freedom and stuff. So yeah, and then I've been wanting to build skate parks. And skate obstacles since like the early 2000s, but I just didn't know how to do it. So I started getting back into landscaping. I'd grown up like doing a bit of building here and there because my stepdad was a builder, and I did house painting, so I learned about paint. And that was also how I got into using roller paint and stuff. I was getting paint through my work, leftovers, and I started learning about acrylics and enamels, and you know, like I didn't really know about any of that stuff when I was younger. So I learned that through house painting, and then I did landscaping, and then I started learning about concrete. I helped build a skate park in Oairaka, but I hurt my back partway through, and so we were partying way too much, and I think that had a hand in it. But so I'd kind of like, I had this dream to build skate parks or build skatable sculptures. I don't know, I just kind of kept hitting dead ends and obstacles. But then after doing the stint in Dunedin, I came back to Auckland because that Neck Minute thing happened, and I was just doing heaps of TV and riding that wave, and came back to Auckland and I was doing paintings and stuff, and I was like, okay, I need to get a day job, because having fuck all money all the time, like I was doing skate schools and teaching kids to skate. I don't know, it was good, it was cool, it was an awesome experience, but I was like, okay, I'm not going to make a living doing this, so I'm like, I just got to bite the bullet. And so I went back to landscaping, and then through landscaping we did a lot of concreting. A lot of it was hardscaping, and then when we started making the molds, and I saw the way that we were doing formwork and how you had to take the formwork apart and leave the concrete, be able to get it out, which was kind of difficult because you'd have to make it all a certain way so you could undo it all without having to smash it to bits and risk smashing the concrete. Yeah, and then I guess I made my first cube, and that would have been like 4 years ago, I think.
Wow.
So 2000 and maybe 5 years ago. Like 2016 or something. And then I looked on the internet and I discovered David Umimoto, and saw that he was making small concrete works. And so I kind of studied into how he was doing the molds and stuff. And
graffiti or
no, just like brutalism and architectural forms, and it just started developing from there. And I didn't really have any intention to go back into the streets. Like, I was just, no, but I definitely kept thinking about and doing installations, like guerrilla installations. And then it wasn't to lockdown last year, and I got the government subsidy. I don't know, I just thought, oh, I'm just gonna make I'd made a few like basic geometric tiles, and then I was like, well, I could make versions of my paintings and my 3D sculptures as tiles and put them up in the street. And I was like, well, that's kind of cool, because there's nothing going on in Auckland as far as, apart from murals, and it's the graffiti in the last few years since I've started doing this has crept back in, but there's nothing in between. There was no, and I thought, oh, well, I could put these tiles up, and no one would really know what they were, or if they did know, like, they're not going to think it's graffiti. It's not going to be offensive to them. So it was, I don't know, I thought, well, and it's a cool way to put some free art out there for the subsidy that I got paid by the government. And and it was just kind of a cool way around the rules. It's like finding that loophole, And I was like, and it's cool, and it's kind of like cool little way to advertise my work, and just something interesting when all of our buildings are so basic now, and just we're surrounded by so many buildings are made to a price point, They're not elaborate, they don't, expense is spared. They just are. So yeah, it was like a cool way to put ornamentation back into society and create something of interest and something that's a mystery, or,
I know that when you painted this pavilion, you know how that guy rocked up kind of towards the end when he was like, what's happened? What did you do? Like, and he was so taken back that, originally it was the black buff, had the green tape, and he was like, you painted it grey, what's... Yeah. So to me, I really enjoyed that reaction.
Yeah, well, and it was like, and I was kind of bummed a little bit, because part of me wanted to paint it full colour, and I was kind of limited to time, and I knew that it was going to be a lot of surfaces, and painting small can be harder than painting big, but I did kind of want to paint it grey, and it's kind of cool, because that's the reaction of the public, is, why did you paint it grey? And it's like, well, that's what they've done to our city, and everything's been painted grey, and the life's been taken away. So I had some other like little kids come through on their BMXs when I was there by myself, and they were like, oh, I like the one that was here before better. It was that colourful one. And I was like, oh yeah. I was like, but it was like, okay, cool, but that's the dialogue that I wanted to open up, and I'm still tempted to go back and colour it in, but I also like concentrating on the forms, and I think that, and that was also what I realised when I was painting grey pieces, was that it wasn't quite right, it wasn't quite, I don't know, once I started, I guess going grey was like sort of like becoming the wall and going into it and going back to the basic, and then making things out of concrete is like
being part of the wall, right?
Yeah, no, but it's coming back out of the wall.
True.
And also, yeah, like and putting the tiles up and stuff for me was like going, oh, like I kind of got told that it was good that I'd come inside. But then you come inside and you're still not accepted. You're still an outsider on the inside. And so I was like, okay, cool. I'm going to take my work back outside. I'm going to go back to being outside, and until you ask me to come in. And then I'll still probably be outside.
Yeah.
Oh, and then I'll be like, I'm not coming in. Like, and I'll be known for that. And which is cool. It's a fun time for me because it's still got their mystique. And I don't know. And if it did blow up, then it's going to lose that, you know, and it's going to become, then it'll be like Banksy or Space Invader. But I think it's less catchy, you know. It's less pop art. It's more brutalism and Art Deco, and it's old fashioned, and it's kind of like bringing back something old fashioned that's been lost in a way.
And so last question.
Yeah.
And so moving forward from where you are now, what can we expect to see next?
I still have my dream of building skatable sculptures, which I'm working towards, you know, slowly working towards making that a reality. It's very scary because I know from previous experiments that it's easy to envisage something that's good to skate, but when you build it, if you get any dimensions slightly wrong, it can be completely just about unskateable. So there's that, but also just really exploring the outside more, and more relief walls and installations and big standalone sculptures, maybe not necessarily skatable. But I don't think that I've finished exploring the tile art and where that's going to go. But yeah, who knows? But I mean, definitely it's like I kind of feel like I got a bit of a head start on people by getting into the concrete when I did, and luckily I'm like kind of one of the first people in New Zealand to be doing it. So I feel like people are starting to get more into like mold making and learning how to build things, and so I'm sort of really pushing myself to not get stuck and not just
be the leader of the game.
Yeah, just try and keep moving, you know, and try and keep exploring new realms. And I don't know, graffiti in general is very it's interactive. You put something there and then someone will come and mess with it, you know. Even like I put my tiles up and someone tags over it, and then the buff comes and they half roller over it, and then it's got like a half a tag, and you know, it's like I like that chaos, that I guess because through graffiti, everything being so out of your hands and you're not in control of it, I think that has become part of my love for in art. Is like, so yeah, I'd like to keep exploring that interaction, and working with other people as well. So yeah, we'll see where it goes. And I mean, and I guess, and my skateboarding as well, which we haven't really talked about where I'm at with that now, but getting into downhill, but also taking that back to the streets and exploring the sidewalks and the features and everything. I don't know, like I wouldn't be surprised if like that's a big part of my art too, which is often not perceived as a part of it, but it is still. Yeah, because when I skate around the streets, I leave wheel marks everywhere and like big streaks, and they're like, to me, they're like a brush stroke that you use your full body. Is about as gestural as you get. Most of them, they get washed away. I've thought about trying to get wheels that are leave permanent marks. But yes, I mean, that's like another whole side of it. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, it's just, it feels like the path's set and I'm just riding it, you know?
Yep.
You just learn from each little thing, and you learn things that you wouldn't maybe have thought that you were going to learn. And that's the beautiful part, is those little epiphanies, you know?
Yep. Totally, man.
Yeah.
All right. We might wrap it up there. Thanks, Levi, for joining us for this video. And to all our listeners and watchers out there, if you've managed to sit through the interview, congrats.
Well done.
Yeah. Thanks for tuning in. And our next artist that we've got on board is also an artist which has come in an era after Levi, I believe. We've got Gasp from RFC.
No, Gasp.
Same era?
Same era. I used to hang out with Gas. Like, sorry, I didn't even mention Gas, but yeah, he was there too. We used to hang out in my mate's bedroom, and Gas used to come around and with his little bag of Tamiya cans, and he's OG.
Yeah, dope,
Gasper's OG, respect.
Yeah, I mean, well, we've got him for the next episode, so make sure you check it out. That will be coming out in April.
Awesome.
Thanks for tuning in, guys. Catch ya.